My guest today is Kelsey Grimm, who's known by most as a singer alongside her husband Caleb in their duo, Caleb and Kelsey. She also considers herself a stay-at-home mom with a majority of her time spent raising three beautiful children in Nashville. Kelsey is an enthusiastic adrenaline junkie who craves deep, meaningful relationships and below-the-surface conversations. In today's episode, we talk about her book, Over It, Forgetting Who You're Expected to Be and Becoming Who You Already Are. In this book, Kelsey invites you into her life to talk to you about the ridiculous expectations of who you're supposed to be and encourages you to embrace the beautiful realities of who you already are. Welcome to Lifeology.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Oh, thank you. I'm really looking forward to this. We had a wonderful talk in the pre-call, so I know you and I are going to just probably laugh the whole time, but which is great.
We probably will.
Now, how did you? Well, exactly. Now, how did you and Caleb even meet?
So at the time, this is a funny story. At the time, I was in a girl group and he was in a boy band, and we had a mutual friend, and we landed ourselves at a Halloween party back in like 2012, I think. Oh, and it all started there. I was Ginger Spice and he met me as Ginger Spice. And that's where it all started.
That is hysterical.
I know.
The Lifetime movie then began.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I was listening to separate music, and obviously you don't need me to tell you this, but you both are so talented. The one that I just listened to was Dance with Me. Dance
with Me. Yes, that's that's the original.
Yeah, that was gorgeous. And I was listening to it, I was like,
you.
oh my gosh, it was really, really pretty.
Thank
so
you
I'm really,
much.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
that's one of my faves too, to be honest.
Yeah. What inspires the two of you when you write?
I don't do a lot of the writing, to be totally transparent. That's Caleb, mostly Caleb. I'm a writer and author, obviously. Yeah.
We're talking about
on some levels, yes, more of that to come. But as it pertains to the music, that's kind of Caleb's bag, and I just do the singing. So,
and that's why you both are the perfect duo.
It's like the perfect team. Yeah,
perfect duo.
He tells me when to sing, I sing, and it works out. It works out for everybody. So it's kind of a little bit of everything. Inspiration from all over. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, let's turn just into your book, because there's so much I want to cover with it. You went through a lot of things in your life, and we get to see who you are today and how you were able to make that transformation to become Kelsey. So the book is called Over It, Forgetting Who You're Expected to Be and Becoming Who You Already Are. How did you, because from what I read, you kind of grew up in the church. There's all these expectations that were told that you had to be, and you went through a lot and you overcame a lot. So why don't you tell us, how did this book even come about?
Absolutely. So I am a pastor's kid. And if you're listening to this and you're a pastor's kid, then I don't need to explain to you kind of, yes, he's like, hello, I relate already. That I don't have to explain to you, James, this kind of fishbowl effect idea, right? That you're living in a fishbowl and everyone can see you and everyone's watching you. I think I grew up learning at a very young age that people expected something of me, expected me to be a certain thing. And that certain thing happened to be a really put together version of myself. There wasn't ever a whole lot of room to be messy. And so I think I just learned at an early age and operated out of a place of, this is what's expected of me. This is who I need to be for people to accept me and love me. And so I think it started really little for me. And unfortunately, it like the snowball effect, that it just kind of became, it manifested in different ways the older that I got. But this kind of need to live up to the expectations of people created this internal monster, because what was happening was I'm human and I am messy and I'm not okay. But on the outside, there was this front. I am okay. I can be okay if I look okay. And I can be put together if I need to be. And so I did that. But this internal war that was happening inside me was, I just want to be known for where I am right now, even though it's not pretty and it's not put together. So I became this person that carried around secrets because I couldn't let people know that I was messy, that there was more to me than this perfect exterior. And so ultimately it led me down a really, really dark road. I went to a Christian school in college after high school, and I met a boy, and I allowed him to tell me who I was and who he needed me to be, because I had kind of done this my whole life. I allowed other people to tell me, this is who you are, Kelsey. This is who we need you to be. This is how we need you to show up in the world. And most of that obviously was nonverbal. Like, it wasn't people actually saying to me with words,
of course.
Kelsey, this is the version of you that we need. This is the version that's acceptable to us. It was just kind of this understood, unspoken message that I absorbed growing up. And the way that played out in college was really abusive. I landed myself in an abusive relationship, and it was abusive in every way. Sexually, it was abusive physically, and mentally, and all of the things. And it was very traumatic. And the reality is, if I went into that relationship with confidence and knowing a sense of who I was, I don't think I could have been led down that road. But ultimately I got out right in time. I mean, we were engaged, me and this man, and I managed to escape that relationship. And unfortunately, I didn't feel like I could share what had happened to me for a very long time. Then I was presented with an opportunity to move to Nashville. I was in a girl group for a time. And to me, it felt like the vehicle to do music. It was this opportunity. It kind of just fell in my lap. I took it, I ran with it, and it brought me here to Nashville. And I thought I could start over when I moved here. No one knew who I was. No one knew my past. No one knew what I'd been through with that man. It felt like an opportunity for me to kind of just turn the page. Yeah. And as you well know, and probably everybody listening to this, what you don't deal with in the past catches up with you in the present.
It certainly does.
And my baggage followed me here, and I didn't get that new beginning that I so desperately wanted. All of the bones in my closet resurfaced when I moved here. And ultimately, I pursued a destructive lifestyle out of a place of brokenness. And I found alcohol, and I found more boys and more people who were bad for me. I mean, who had no interest really in who I was as a person, but more what I could offer them, and what benefit I could be to them, you know? Yeah. And so go ahead.
No, I'm so sorry. I was just going to say this real fast. And well, first off, thank you so much for sharing all that, because it's very personal. And so I appreciate your vulnerability and transparency and talking about that. I mean, it's funny because you're doing the opposite of what the culture that you were raised in told you should do. So the fact is, you're literally saying, this is me, take me or leave me. Right. And I love me, and this is what I have to offer. So that's amazing. Sometimes when people have those baggages, the baggage or the skeletons in their closet, it's when we don't deal with it, then we use external versions of our five senses to then take care of that. So we have, drinking, promiscuity, all those five senses are used. And so it's so easy to use the five senses and say, oh, I don't have to deal with it. So just realize that the more of your five senses you use, or the more distractions you have, the internal self gets more wounded because now it takes on a life of itself. So now all of a sudden I'm overindulging in this, or I'm meeting all these people I shouldn't meet, or I'm doing this and that. And so then the baggage then becomes more and more and more. And so I think that's one of the most difficult things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another reframe with the baggage is what I always tell people is baggage it's not the actions, it's how we view ourselves in that event. So whatever happens, it's, this is who I was. And so this is who I was. So this is my label, the label that's been given to me, or I've given to myself. And so now all of a sudden I'm the, if someone sees it bad, I'm the divorced person, or I'm the laid off person, or I'm the depressed person, or I'm this. And that's not who you are. It's simply an event.
It becomes your identity.
So I always tell people, exactly. So to separate the two things, because this is an event. James, you went through this, but now look at you today. That adds up. I always tell people as well, as every event is like a jigsaw puzzle piece. Those puzzle pieces all link together to create the tapestry or the picture of who I am today.
Absolutely.
I like myself. I didn't like those things, but I like
analogy. Beautiful analogy. I love that so much. And it's true. I think we do, in the weak places, the weak moments in our lives, we tend to label ourselves even sometimes when we go through something traumatic, or we have deep regret over decisions that we've made. It becomes so much what we walk around seeing ourselves as, I'm the girl who was sexually abused. I'm the girl who lost everything because I made bad choices, and it just becomes this identity that you walk around with. But, for me, fortunately, the story didn't end there. It did get worse before it got better.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be totally
That's usually what
transparent in
happens.
that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's what tends to happen when we don't deal with trauma,
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't when I first moved to Nashville. And it ultimately led me to a very dark suicidal night here in town. And a phone call timed perfectly from my dad, a divine moment in time,
Yes.
saved my life. And
Wow.
that was the beginning. That I call them movie moments, like these moments in our lives that are like frozen in time that kind of shift the entire trajectory of where you're headed.
Exactly.
And that phone call from my dad was that for me. Things started like that night on that bridge was rock bottom for me. And it took me getting there to that place to recognize that I was there. This was the bottom. And I can only go up from here, and I think in that moment, I didn't make a conscious decision that my life was worth living, but that phone call from my dad triggered something in me to know just maybe there is something better on the other side of all of this for me, and then it took finding the right people to get help. I mean, I got professional help. I found an amazing counselor, therapist, and I worked for months and months and months through the trauma that I'd been through in college and never dealt with. It had been over a year since I'd cut off that relationship. And before I ever said a word to another human being about what actually happened with him.
Wow.
And when I first uttered that to my counselor and I told him everything, that was the first wall coming down, the first step toward healing, and the more I got to be known by the people who loved me in my life, my parents, my brothers, my, small circle of friends, I started to let them in, and I started to allow myself to be known for everything I was, not everything I wasn't. And when I started to realize that I was still loved in that place, it became easier and easier, to open up. And I think, I mean, looking back at that time, there was a real conversation that I had with my mom after coming clean to her about my trauma of that relationship. And I told her, Mom, I'll never share this story with anyone outside of this small, tight-knit community that I've already shared it with. And she was like, okay, baby, that's okay. But I just want you to know, I think someday you will. And I think that someday God will use this story to help somebody come in behind you. And mothers, as they often are, she was right.
Which now
and
you are as well.
I am, a decade later, sharing my story as publicly as it gets in a book, and it's, I look back at that time when I promised myself I would never do this, and I broke that promise. And it's the only promise in my life to this day that I am grateful that I broke, It's a good place to be on the other side of trauma. There is healing. And I am walking proof of that. I am.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a beautiful story, a very painful story, but beautiful nonetheless on the other side. What would you tell Kelsey 10 years ago? What advice would you give her? What would you do or say to her?
I think it makes me sad to think about that girl that many years ago. I don't recognize her anymore because she don't live here no more, But if I could go back in time and say something to her, I would say, Kelsey, you are already enough. Just as you are already loved by the one who created you, which makes you inherently good enough. And you don't have to do anything. You don't have to be anything. You don't have to put on any fronts. You can show up in the world as you are. And that is enough. That's enough. And I think if I would have believed that about myself at that time, things may have played out differently, but I'm not a person that lives with regret. I believe that what I went through was for a purpose, and I wouldn't be who I am today without those experiences, as painful as they were. I'm grateful for them now.
And it goes back to the jigsaw puzzle pieces that we were talking about earlier. It links 100%. Together to who you are today.
Absolutely. Yes.
With having 3 beautiful children, you and Caleb, what your parents, obviously, your family obviously loved and cared about you. And amazing parents. Unfortunately, sometimes that culture of not them, of just in certain settings can cause us to feel like we have to, look a certain way. How do you, for your own kids, how did the two of you and Caleb, make sure that that is not repeated in your own family system?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I had a really concrete answer. My kids are 1, 3, and 4 years old, so they're still really little, but these are things, it's such a good question because these are topics that Caleb and I are already discussing in great depth. How are we going to raise our kids?
Good.
Because here's the reality. I grew up in a very conservative Christian evangelical environment that told me subliminally that I needed to be perfect, and I can assure you that we will not raise our kids in a belief system that teaches those things verbally or otherwise. But the reality, and this is where I feel like every single person who is within the earshot of my voice right now can relate to this. Whether you grew up in a conservative Christian environment or not, and had those expectations placed on you, or if you didn't, the reality is you're living in it now. Like we are all scrolling these expectations. If they weren't pushed on you as a kid, they're being pushed on you now. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And everywhere you turn, every direction you turn your head, there are expectations. There are standards of which we present ourselves, we carry ourselves, what we eat, how we dress, how we look, what our weight is, like your body image, how you, just how you show up in the world. Like these expectations are loud and clear, in our culture and society today. And I think to answer your question as it pertains to my children, I want them to know that these standards are unattainable. You were never meant to even try to live up to what culture is telling us is the baseline. Screw the baseline. It doesn't exist. Like you are enough because you exist. Like the fact that you are here in the world, leaving footprints, learning as you go, like falling down, getting back up again. That is the human experience, right? Like that's how it was meant to be. Like no one expects you to be perfect. No one expects you to show up looking a certain way. They'll tell you that, but I, as your mom, am here to tell you those are lies.
Yeah,
like
those are
you
lies.
are enough because you are a child of God. Period.
Yes,
Period.
Fearfully and wonderfully made. That's right.
That's exactly right. So I think, will it be an easy message? Will it be an easy thing for me to teach my kids? No, I'm going to stumble my way through it. But
of course,
mercy, I'm going to try.
Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing, it's without trying, obviously people will succumb to whatever the norm is. And unfortunately, like you said, society has us return to that norm.
That's right.
So
every time. So I'm just here to tell them, and I think it's important too, especially for the women who are listening to this, girls out there, you are worthy of love. You are worthy to be loved. You are worthy of language and words that are life-giving. And whatever you see when you look in the mirror, what I want you to know is that it's good enough. It is like as you just quoted so beautifully, the word of God, fearfully and wonderfully made. That is the truth. The world will tell you all kinds of other things. You just have to remember you are fearfully, wonderfully made, and you're enough. You're enough.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was just watching you as you're talking, just you're so impassioned about that because the comparison, the juxtaposition between who you were 10 years ago and 10 years plus before. And then now in my mind, I was doing kind of a comparison there. And the one side of you would not even be able to probably even look at me, even talk to me. And then here you're like, yes, you are this. And I just love that because it really shows how much the transformation is for you.
I've come a long way.
Yeah, exactly. So on this side of the camera, I just want to really encourage you and empower you. That's such an amazing thing. I'm so proud of you. I mean, just my first time meeting you, but I was so proud of you to see the transformation. And not only that, but just now you teach others, you teach your kids. This part of your new platform is to really instill that you are more than enough. As what we've been given, we have a purpose and a plan for each of our lives, and that's specific to each one of us. And so when we know that I'm here for a reason. You're here for a reason.
That's right.
My listeners and viewers, you're here for a reason. And when you can recognize that your reason is your reason. It's not mine. It's not Kelsey's. It's yours. And that becomes really exciting. She's like, wow, what is my reason? And so that creates that excitement of, I now get to look for that. And so as you as people really listen to what your message is, that you are more than enough, or you are enough, then all of a sudden it starts to really help them say, well, if I'm enough, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do that. Maybe I can do this. Right. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh. And so it's such an amazing,
the sky is the limit
for all of us. Yeah.
Yes.
Really
like there is only one you. So that's beautiful, take up space in the world. That's what I want to do.
Awesome. Well, Kelsey, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on my show today. The time literally flew by. If my listeners want to find out more,
thank you.
If my listeners want, of course, if my listeners want to find out more information about you, to listen to you and Caleb's music, to purchase this book, Over It, Forgetting Who You're Expected to Be and Becoming Who You Already Are, where will they find all this information online?
Yeah, so I'm going to keep it super easy. You can find Caleb and I's music anywhere you listen to music. I mean, streaming, it's on iTunes, Spotify, all the things, all the platforms. And the same goes for my book. Wherever books are sold, you can find Over It. There is a website. I do have a website. It's thekelseygrimm.co. If you want to just head to the website, you can also see all of those things there. You can buy the book, you can hear the music, hear the story, hear the heart behind the why, and all of that kind of good stuff. So it's all there.
Wonderful. Well, my listeners also know that if they cannot find this information any other place, simply go to the show notes at jamesmillerlifeology.com, and I will link you with all of Kelsey's information. Kelsey, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest on my show today. I had a wonderful time with you today.
Thank you so much, James. The pleasure was mine.